Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I'm your co-host Andrew Lewin with my co-host Dr. David Ebert. Dave, you ready to talk about some sawfish?
I have to tell you, Andrew, this really is truly a bonus episode we're doing today with Rachel, because as we kind of alluded to in the last time when she's on a few weeks ago, is that we had her on to talk about tiger sharks, and kind of after we finished there, she brought up about happened to casually mention the Sawfish project she had going on, which has not really received any attention yet. And we thought, wow, okay, Rach, we'll have you back on and we'll do another episode with you to talk about this unbelievable story. And it really is, if you follow sawfish conservation, or you're into just follow shark conservation in general, you'll find this an incredible story of how they discovered this whole area that was unknown previously, sawfish. And so so it was. I guess we got people like Rachel. We just need to have on more frequently, I guess, because we just
agreed.
We didn't even know about this and found it out. So as I said, it really is truly a bonus episode, and I really hope people enjoy it, because this was a pretty exciting episode, I think.
Well, it was fun, and we'll talk about it after when we publish the interview, when you guys listen to the interview. But it's one of those where there's some benefits to like social consequences, in certain geographies around the world. So environmental benefits, the places where we least exist or least change are usually where the environment's the best, and we usually have these kind of interesting discoveries. But it just goes to show, Marlines is working out there with people who grew up there for over generations and generations and generations across Central America and parts of the Caribbean, and it's such an important aspect to build those community relationships and to work with communities to discover, a nursery haven for sawtooth sharks. I think it's great. So we're gonna talk about that. So how about we start the interview with Rachel Graham talking about the sawtooth sharks.
Sawfish.
Enjoy. Let's do that.
Okay.
Again. Let's do that again.
Okay.
So here's the interview with Rachel Graham talking about this new discovery. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you after. Hey, Rachel, welcome back again to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about sawfish today?
I am so ready, Andrew. So ready.
All right. I love it.
Welcome back, everybody. Guess who we have on today again? We have Dr. Rachel Graham, who she came on originally to talk about tiger sharks here recently, and at the end of the episode, she started talking about this amazing discovery she has with sawfish. And Andrew and I thought, well, we have to have her back on to talk about sawfish. We can't let that one go to waste. So, Rachel, welcome back to the show again. Glad to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me back, and so quickly after the tiger sharks. But it's like boom, boom, boom. We're getting all these incredible discoveries, and globally relevant discoveries.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, so like I said, it was 4 years from the last time you were on. Now you've been on here twice now. It's great. We'll have to start having a regular segment with you about sharks in the Middle Americas. So I'll just turn it over to you. Why don't you tell us all about your sawfish research down in Central America?
Absolutely. So I think one of the reasons why you were excited to have this episode is that here we are in 2026, and we know that the distribution of large-toothed sawfish, Pristis pristis, has shrunk incredibly throughout the world. You have some lifeboat populations left in, for example, Northern Australia, Papua New Guinea, Western Indian Ocean, a couple of places, potentially Brazil, definitely in Brazil, potentially Colombia and Ecuador, etc. We've had a couple of captures over in Costa Rica and in Central America, but they're far and few between. And here we have, after several years of working with this, and I say here, I'm speaking from Panama, after several years of having conducted surveys with fishers, our Marlines team, originally led 10 years ago by Megan Chevis, and then working with several local partners from communities, have actually discovered what seems to be the largest nursery ground for large-toothed sawfish so far in the Americas. So we know that if sawfish are existing in other parts of the Americas. I'm sure there are other nursery grounds, but there is no getting around the fact that we have managed to get incredible capture rates, especially last year.
Hmm.
And we are moving towards behavioral change with the communities we're working with, the fishers we are working with, behavioral change, policy change, working with the Fisheries Department, Ministry for Environment in Panama, and so many other actors, so that we can not only try to um, ensure or safeguard the persistence of the sawfish in this nursery site. But of course, if it's a nursery site, we must have some adult sawfish somewhere. So expand that work to the rest of Panama and the region and really try to restore this population, which is so incredibly depleted, primarily from extensive gill net, shrimping, and
Hmm.
other net related fisheries.
How do you think this particular site kind of remained relatively unin, unintruded upon by fishers and others?
So the site that we found is in the Darien Gap, which until
Mm.
recently has been heavily featured in the news, primarily for that trans-Darien Gap migration, people coming into Venezuela, Colombia, and more, and then crossing over into Panama in the hopes of moving up Central America and into the United States. Darien Gap is
Mhm.
very, very well known for being very remote, being hostile, dangerous, very dangerous. And this is the same area where that persistent population of sawfish
Mm.
remains.
Interesting.
Yeah, it
So
seems like
it's kind of like those areas where you've got the old ordnance or unexploded bomb
yeah,
areas offshore. Nobody touches them, nobody goes there. And then when you kind of do a survey of the fish, you realize the fish are thriving because nobody dares go there. And that's
yeah.
very much the
Well,
Yeah.
situation in the Darien Gap.
well,
What?
I would say there's a couple things, a couple examples I can think of is, when they had the issues with the Somali pirates off Somalia, nobody was going in that area there. Nobody was fishing in that area. And the fish populations, the tunas just
Like boom.
rebounded amazingly. And then the other one is the tentacled tenacular butterfly ray, which we were about to declare extinct. Turned out that there's a remnant population that is found in the what's the Straits of Hormuz. It's the only
Oh, right,
population
yes.
left in the war. And if you're familiar with the Straits of Hormuz, on the Iranian side, that's the only population of this butterfly ray left in the world. We thought it was extinct, and then turned up, we found this. So, getting to your point here, it sounds like the Darien Gap and Sawfish is there's the same type of thing where nobody goes there because it's highly dangerous.
So what, Rachel? What makes it so dangerous? I'm curious. I'm not familiar with the region.
So not only is it a difficult territory, it's mountainous, it's jungle,
Uh,
it's riverine, but there's also a lot of banditry. So a lot of people would get assaulted actually on the way from
oh.
Colombia into Panama and worse. So very scary. I've talked to several people who've gone through the Darien Gap, and the stories are pretty horrific. So in
Oh
that
wow.
backdrop, we were working further south from some of the key transfer or crossover areas, but these areas as well are pretty remote, and in fact have a lot of police and military checks. So we're constantly having to check our passports and our our ID
Mhm.
cards and more. They register us, and so we always have to check in with the authorities when we're working in that area. And this is one of the
Oh, gotcha.
reasons also why it's such a privilege to be able to work with indigenous fishers in the area. You have two
Mm,
indigenous groups, the Wonan and the Embera. And so we work very closely with them. And since they're moving up and down the rivers to fish, to move
right.
their agricultural products and more. And as a result, we're not just looking for sawfish, we're also trying to establish baselines for the riverine fisheries riverine fish, and so much more. And yeah.
Do they get? Are there any other freshwater stingrays get up into that area? Are you aware of it?
I'm
just
sure
curious.
there must be, but I haven't. And I've asked the fishers to please share with us any unusual species that they don't recognize or more. And we have not had any of the freshwater stingrays coming out in any of the surveys that we're doing. And so we're doing quite a few
Interesting.
surveys across multiple river basins. We are finding other nursery sites, for example, for hammerhead species and even bull sharks. So
Oh wow.
we're going to be expanding our whole project in that entire region to a host of other species.
So now with the sawfish, you've identified this area. Are you looking to try to develop some protective areas with the government in that area?
So it's interesting because what we found is that if the fishers, and so these are some of the data that we've taken up, if the fishers get to the sawfish pretty quickly and they're incentivized to check their nets more, and there is a bonus scheme that we're working with because these animals are so rare, we can afford to work on a bonus scheme. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then you'll check your nets more frequently and the mortality is much reduced. And in fact, what we're finding now is we're having a over 90% survival rate of
Oh
sawfish
wow.
from the nets. Yes. And
Because they're able to get to it quickly.
it used to be
Ah.
60, and then with the bonus, then it's
Yeah.
edged up and edged up. And what we're seeing also is that the fishers themselves have said, we would like to see the species protected. We know how to take them out of nets, etc. We get a bonus for it. We're recognized for what we're doing, and now their women folk are also part of the project, and they're creating some of this incredible sawfish artisanry, which I'm showing you right now
Oh,
on the,
Oh,
and
cool.
this is just the little Christmas ornament version of the sawfish. But it's taken off. We make really big ones that take sometimes 2 months to make. And
Oh
this is
wow.
all native grasses that are hand dyed with organic dyes and all the rest. Anyway, all to say that now, the whole family's getting in on the sawfish, what I like to call the river guardians. And so where are we going with this? We'd love to see sawfish protected as a species throughout
Hmm.
Panama. And that proposal is in front of the Ministry for Environment and also with the Department of Fisheries, with support from the fishers who are catching the sawfish. Um, we have now been formally invited to be part of the reconformed National Shark and Ray Committee, and that is again where we will be proposing this
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 protection.
protection. Yeah, absolutely.
How?
So the
What are the
vision, the
chances?
vision, the vision is that we get this national protection. We get a lot of education outreach. How do you handle safely? Because on larger animals, larger specimens, that can get pretty dicey. And then really big up all people who manage to catch, save, and release, and especially tag. So I'm training a lot of the fishers in how to actually conduct the monitoring and the
Yeah,
tagging science as
that's
well.
so cool. What
yeah.
are the chances that the policy can go through for that protection? Do you find, like, in
I think
terms of,
very strong.
yeah,
I think
like in
there's
your dealings with them before? Yeah.
I think very strong. I had met with the Minister for Environment during the World Conservation Congress, and he was absolutely thrilled by this
Oh, great.
idea of having them be an iconic species of protection. And
Perfect.
especially if you have local support for it, I think that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
And being able to be one of the first countries to show recovery of such a critically threatened or critically endangered species is a massive feather in anybody's cap.
Yeah.
So
Do you think the
Yeah.
the the bonus for the incentive for the fishers to get at the sawfish faster, is that a sustainable program for the long term, or is that more of a short term?
So it's interesting because the short answer is I think yes.
Okay.
when you consider it's not a huge bonus,
Right.
but at the same time, you need to have it be large enough to warrant people wanting to go and check their nets a bit more frequently
Right.
and to
Right.
be able to release them. Right now, small sawfish, there is still illegal trade for sawfish parts. And so we have to combat that as well. And we know that people are after the teeth, they're after the rostra,
Hmm.
and the teeth are used in chicken fights, cockfighting. Um,
Cockfighting.
Right.
Cockfights, absolutely. And we have people who are stalking some of our Facebook posts and all the rest, trying to figure out where they can go to the source to get
Wow. Really?
rostra. Yes.
Are they?
Man.
When you went into some of the villages there, do you see like a lot of roster from generations they've just saved there for curios and stuff?
So it's interesting. All the big rostra, nobody seems to have any big rostra
Hmm.
around, especially in the communities where we're working. So it's very likely that those got sold off.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was given a small rostra that you see behind.
Hmm.
And even in this
Hmm.
one, somebody came in and said, "Hey, can I take a couple of these teeth?"
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah.
so the guy wouldn't give him the rostra, but he
Took some
allowed him
teeth.
to chop out some of the teeth. So
Hmm.
there's still a desire, even with such tiny little teeth. And occasionally, you actually even see these for sale on Facebook Marketplace, along with
Wow.
hawksbill
Hmm.
talons
Really?
that they're using in yes, in
Wow.
cockfighting. And this is just on Facebook Marketplace, openly
Hmm.
visible in Panama.
So
Wow.
cockfighting is a pretty prevalent thing in Panama
Apparently more than I
than you
had
expect.
known. Yes.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
interesting because it affects ocean animals too because of the weapons that they use too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it is because I mean, okay, sawfish are not protected yet, but
right.
hawksbills are. And
Yeah,
what
and
you're
they're still
seeing
using it.
is you're seeing, as I mentioned, a host of different things that are being sold with hawksbill scutes. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, people are even highlighting the fact that they're true and genuine
Oh wow.
hawksbill.
So they're just
Yes.
out there like saying it even though
I,
they're protected.
Oh,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's so.
I have many, many pictures. I know all the costs and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I had no idea the hawksbills were also on there. I mean, I just learned a few years ago that the sawfish roster were
Were you being
the
used?
teeth were used for the
Oh,
because
yes.
yeah, because when I was a kid growing up here, we used to go watch the cockfights on Saturday nights. It was big, the Mexican community here used to love having their cockfights, and they used to just be up the street from where I live. But I had no idea that's what they used. Of course, I was 12 years old, but it was
Of course.
still it
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing to think like all these years later. It's like really that's what they use them for. And then the hawksbill, that's a new one for me now. I had no
Yeah.
flipping idea
Absolutely.
what they
Dave,
would
I'll
use it.
send you, Dave and Andrew, I'll send you some pictures of
Yeah.
they call it estucho with all the
Oh
um,
yeah,
little
yeah,
cockfighting
Yeah. Like
yeah. Well,
spurs
weapons,
another
I
essentially.
guess.
Yeah.
the
Spurs.
other
They're like
spots.
little weapons. Yeah.
Man.
Apparently, Peru's another real hot spot for the cockfighting
Correct.
because a lot of the stuff
Yes.
goes. And I found out from the Peruvians
Ecuador
told.
and Peru.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
when
Hmm.
I was there 2 years ago, like or a year, yeah, 2 years ago, they were talking about the sawfish that had been caught in Ecuador, and they took off the rostra because it was like first one they'd caught in like 20 years or something, and but it was so valuable for the rostra for the cockfighting stuff, and it got shipped to Ecuador. It was caught in Ecuador, but it got shipped to Peru for processing to
That's
make
crazy.
the
So
thing. So
Panama is one of three countries where we're really checking to see kind of where if sawfish are still extant, and the two other countries are Belize and Honduras. And so I'd done a
mm,
lot of surveys years ago, looking at whether people had seen any sawfish recently. So we've got an idea of when the last sawfish was seen
mm,
in each of these countries. And in Belize, people hadn't seen there weren't any verifiable records of sawfish in when I did those surveys before 2010. It was around, it had been 10 years, 15 years or more. And large tooth
mhm.
sawfish hadn't been seen in 30 or 40 years. So in Honduras, they had been seen more recently. In fact, we did a whole survey in the Mosquitia, all throughout Honduras and
Oh,
in the
wow.
Pacific. Yeah, and Pacific, nothing. In the Mosquitia, absolutely several people had actually noted
Interesting.
sawfish more recently. So then I followed this up with eDNA. So in about when was it, 2018 or so, I did a whole bunch of eDNA work. And sure enough, Darien was very much highlighted as a site with still, or 2018, 2019, with extant sawfish. And of course, now we have the proof with all the captures and more.
Yeah.
In Honduras, same thing. Lots of positives, again in La Mosquitia. So we know that the sawfish are there. Because they're lagoons, more freshwater, very likely are going to be the large-toothed sawfish, because we just had a primer for both sawfish species that you can find in Central America, especially on the Caribbean coast, Pristis pectinata and Pristis pristis. And then in Belize, this is what blew our socks up, because we have, deployed over 80,000 hooks, so many scientific long lines, so many people have used gill nets until about 5 years ago when we managed to get those banned, actually, first big nation to get gill nets banned in their territorial waters. And we have positive signals that sawfish are still alive in Belize.
Wow.
Somehow, I have no idea how, because we've never seen one, we've never caught one, never on a bruv or anything. But our colleagues who are processing the eDNA samples said, "Oh yeah, these are definitely positives," and from
Wow.
two ends of the country too, which is
Yeah.
very interesting.
Now,
So
Very interesting.
I say they're pretty habitats. They're really mangrove areas are really important for their
yes,
survival and their
correct.
life cycle.
Yeah. Estuarine, mangrove, riverine, large kind of deeper rivers. They like, especially if they're large animals. Yeah.
Now, the large ones, are they there year round, or do they move around and they go to certain areas? Well, obviously you got the one
So we don't
nursery
know
area.
here. That's the thing. We don't
Okay.
know. And what we're trying to figure out next is the movement patterns for these juveniles. So
Oh,
we're going to
okay.
be doing some acoustic tagging. They're a little bit too small for maybe sat tagging, and there's a lot of fallen branches and everything, and we just don't
That'd be
want them
difficult.
ripping up their fins and stuff. After all, they are critically endangered species.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
really take care of them very well. And so the whole aspect of handling and care and ethics has been absolutely top number one with fishers.
Now,
Yeah.
now it seems like the Caribbean side, you're finding some little sort of rays of hope on that side. On the Pacific side, it's pretty barren. You're not finding much of anything in terms of sawfish, are you?
So these are all on the Pacific side.
Oh, these are on. Okay.
Yes, so the
Okay.
Darien and this whole riverine system is giving into the Pacific. So
Okay.
some other
Okay.
areas, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I didn't
So
understand.
and this is where we need to expand the search for the adults, because clearly I've had folks who've shared some sightings of much larger animals, and in fact 10 years ago, so 9 years ago, we did have Fisher. You're going to love this story. I'm in a yellow taxi in Panama City. We get chatting. He's the cousin of a fisherman who lives in blah, blah, blah. We talk about sawfish and all the rest. And he goes, "Oh, I think we used to have them in our river some time ago." I go, "Here's my card. Here's our sticker.
Yeah.
Tell me, get in touch if ever there's anything." Next thing you know, I'm actually out of the country, but Megan, our national coordinator, is like, "Rachel, I just got a call from a fisher. They just landed a 3-meter sawfish in
Wow.
this river
Wow.
system facing the Pacific." I said, "Drop everything, get on a bus, tell him not to cut everything up, keep stuff for you and all the rest." She got there. Unfortunately, the guy had thrown away a lot of stuff already,
Oh, no.
but there was still some pieces of the fillet, pieces of the skin and stuff, and of course the rostrum, which the guy did not want to give away. And but we managed to get quite a bit of data from it. And that was also how we did a little control test for the people doing the eDNA work, because it must
Oh,
have been
right.
2017, I guess, because we did a control test in a bucket of water. And I remember them coming back to me going, this is a really strong signal. Where was this? You definitely have sawfish here. I didn't want to say, yeah, it's a bucket
It's
in
in
the
a bucket.
Pacific. But it just shows that those larger animals are then, it seems, moving maybe across multiple estuaries.
Yeah.
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 Well,
That's
we
amazing.
had, this might be something, we had Diego Cardonosa on last year, and he talked about lots of areas in Colombia that
Yes.
you can't go to. And I know Ecuador is the same way, and Peru, just because of the drug trade, and you
Yes.
just can't go there. It's super dangerous to go there. And so do you think these might be sort of these lifeboats for some of these things like the sawfish in these areas?
Oh, absolutely. Because if it's not, discarded ordnance and bombs
Hmm.
or, dangerous migration routes, then it's a drug trade.
Yeah.
And there are certain
Yeah.
areas where I have learned over the course of my 28 years in this sector that you just don't go to. Or if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go to, you need to make the right relationships and let people know that you have no intention of talking to
Yeah.
anybody, etc. And this is what you're going to be doing. And in fact, that has gotten us out of trouble in a couple of instances, because when you work locally with fishers locally and others, they will be the ones who say, you know what, maybe tonight we don't sample over there. And
Right.
you go,
Because they know.
I understand. Please know that we will be sampling 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Lights at night. Let whoever needs to know
Yeah.
know. And it's those kinds of things. And also, and there was an alert at one point because I had revealed the scale of the shark fishery between Belize and Guatemala. And there were Guatemalan fishers and Belizean fishers who basically said, you cannot travel to Guatemala in the near future. You cannot go to Guatemala,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
because you have really pissed off some key
The wrong
people.
people. Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
3 to 4 years, I did not go to Guatemala.
Guy,
But you
I can't
wouldn't
put,
know that. And they don't play. They don't play. I
No.
used to live in
No.
no.
Guatemala. I know exactly. And I used to live in Honduras. You don't, when you get that, that's a kind enough heads up.
Yeah.
Don't mess with that. But
Yeah.
that is another reason why you work to democratize science, you work locally, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't suit people locally who will be the ones at the front lines determining whether or not they're going to steward these species,
Hmm.
ensure that laws are upheld or more,
Yeah.
then don't bother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I think we're learning that across the world now,
Yeah.
in
Yes.
conservation, right? Where you can't just come in, parachute in and parachute out with the data and not share it. You're not going to get any conservation action done through that. You have to work with the local people and make sure they get buy-in, make sure they're part of the project too, right? You talk about it all the time, Rachel. A lot of them are part of the project.
It's not even part of the project. It's sitting down and developing the project together, and that's how you
Ah,
find out.
right.
That's taking it more steps,
Yeah.
and it's really, and you finding out what are the needs. So the reason why we started looking at doing a baseline for the fisheries, the riverine fisheries, is because fishers were saying, when you have these conversations, what are some of your biggest challenges? Where do you get your protein from? How do you maintain your family, pay your bills, and all the rest? That's when a lot of these things are coming out, that basically um, they're reliant on one or two species. That one or two species is becoming scarce. They're having to
Right.
shift to other species, but now they're terribly worried. They're seeing
Yeah.
shifts because of climate change. I mean, all of this comes out. And then the question is, would you like to figure out what's happening and we can do it together?
Yep.
And that's the question. And that's how a lot of these
That's how
projects are
yeah.
born.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense on both sides too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You definitely got to. Yeah. I mean, there's no. Otherwise, you cannot work anywhere of these places like you're going if you didn't have that.
I
Didn't
wouldn't want
get it.
to. I wouldn't want
No.
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't want to. And it's so much richer, and trying to come up with, a kind of a co-created solution to what's going on. And to be honest, I mean, sometimes they were like, oh, sawfish, yeah, we get sawfish occasionally, etc. And when I put it into perspective, and I've given several presentations and talks in the communities, etc., and I said, I want you guys to know how unbelievably special your situation is. I said, I've had the privilege of being able to work in a lot of different countries. I have been looking for sawfish for 25 years plus, and you guys still have them. The majority of the world no longer has these animals. So it really is up to you. And the reason why we want to look into it is because it is a global priority, or we're going to lose an animal that can reach 23 feet in length. We can lose our present day dragons.
Yeah.
That's
insane.
That's I mean, they're definitely, I always kind of thought if there was one species I could see going extinct in our lifetime, it'd be the sawfish, because they're just they just go down so quickly. But right now, Australia and the U.S., the only two places where you got a bit of a lifeboat, as you say, for these things left. But everywhere else, they're just getting.
So this brings me full circle to one of the questions that Andrew had, which is the policies. So one of the things that we've seen is, if we're going to try and restore populations of fish, of marine megafauna, one of the things that we have to do is we have to reduce fishing effort. We have to make it more equitable. Making it equitable is, well, if you're using a hook and line versus a net that has 100 times the effort, that's where you need to look in terms of making things more equitable. So there have to be some hard choices also, and we're already seeing this will probably be this. I'm very excited. This will probably be yet another episode with you guys, because we need these stories of hope to know that some of these policies are actually working. Are these MPAs working? Are these policies working?
Yes.
The gill net ban in Belize, is it actually working?
Right.
We are actually getting signals. So we're trying to quantify those signals of restoration of some of the populations because of the gill net ban. And what does that do? That then inspires others to think, well, if they can do it, we can do it. Maybe not everywhere all at once, but parts in areas, like we know that this sawfish aggregate in this particular area. Could we maybe just not set at this time of the year in this place, knowing that, or
and then see how it goes.
And see how it goes.
Yeah, you hit on a great point about you got to show some positive results, some
absolutely,
as I call them, happy stories, but something so people see that there's okay, if we do this, take these steps, it can work. Yeah, rather than just always a constant doom and gloom.
Absolutely.
Anyway, well, Rachel, it's been another awesome show with you here. We're definitely look like you'll be back again for saying some more. As I say, you might get to the point where I have to make you like a co-host here.
I think so.
On here and just to get on here, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing your sawfish story, and we'll definitely want to follow up more as this progresses to see how it's going and what happens with the whole story there. So anyway, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
For coming
thank
on.
you so much, Rachel. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andrew. It's such a pleasure to be able to be on this podcast with you. And again, so many questions to answer. It's exciting, curiosity, discovery. Love it. I think it's the engines that drive us.
And it seems like Mar Alliance is doing quite a lot of work, all over Central America, and I think in the Americas, it's awesome.
So I like to say, I speak for myself, but I think probably Mar Alliance in general, we're a little bit like Greg Norman. Do you remember Greg Norman, the golfer? His favorite adage was, he's called the shark, right?
Yes.
And his favorite adage was, I bite off more than I can chew, and I chew like hell. I'd say that should be on my tombstone, because...
Well, you're doing great work. We do appreciate it. And we appreciate you coming on the podcast to share it with us all the time. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Rachel, for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. It was great to have you back on and to talk about these wonderful studies that you've been a part of and that Mar Alliance has been a part of. Dave, what were your thoughts overall on the interview? To being in such a dangerous area, to having such a beautiful discovery. What's your take on that stuff? You've had experiences with, traveling in certain places and being in areas where, probably maybe you shouldn't have been, or or you get caught up as someone who doesn't know the area, or you're working with people in the area to say, hey, don't go in that area because it could be dangerous. But then you get these benefits, these environmental benefits when you have this. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, people have heard me talk about this in some of the recent projects I've been on. You need to work, and I always emphasize, you have to work with the local people there. You have to, local researchers, conservationists, scientists. You just cannot go into a lot of these areas on your own because it won't end well for you. And this is the area she was talking about is a particularly dangerous area. And, she really basically got to have her contacts in there, go in there and gather up the information and stuff.
Right.
Because if you go in there, it probably won't end well for you, unless, so, and you've got to, so that's a really important thing to recognize. But she has a good relationships with the people there, which is ultimately bottom line. You have to have a good relationships with the people there who are able to go in there and gather a lot of information, get a lot of the data there. And it's fascinating discovery. And it turns out you have an unintended marine protected area because nobody else is going to go in there to try to get the sawfish.
Right.
Because it's too dangerous for them. And so in other words, it's like, you could put in some policies to kind of protect the area, but in a way it's already pretty heavily protected, literally armed protected now.
Mm-hmm.
So what else you could do?
It's the best enforcement you can get, but for the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But it was besides the exciting of the discovery, it's fascinating to hear. I think again, people that don't do this type of research or work in these parts of the world, it really emphasizes that you need to have good relations with the local people there you're working with if you're going to try to do anything there. And it was an exciting discovery. Like I said, when she brought it up, we had her on to talk about tiger sharks a few weeks ago. Like this sort of came up, and I was like, we got to have her on to talk about this one. And she didn't disappoint, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure. Well, and I think what's interesting too, for a lot of the people who are listening to this who want to get into shark research, there's still, we've talked about this a lot of episodes. There's still so much to know about sharks and discover about all different types of species about sharks. Rachel brought some great tiger shark news last time she was on. Now she's bringing, this information, about this type of shark, sawfish, right? And so it's interesting how all these things come about. But we should also mention that Rachel lives in Panama. She's entrenched in the community there. She is part of the community now. That's been living there for a very, very long time. And so she understands the dynamics of the country. She understands the dynamic of the local communities. She has a lot of experience. She works, she employs some of the people from Panama and then other places where they work, whether it be Mexico, Belize, and Honduras, and so forth. I think that's an important part. It's not as if Rachel and her team are just coming in and saying, "Hey, you need to do this, this, and this." No. This is something that she probably had a conversation with somebody, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We've seen these sharks here before. Okay, let's see how we can discover." And I think for people who are listening to this, we always mention the young people in there. Who are listening to this, it's important that you work with local communities when you do this type of research or when you're trying to do this discovery. To go in on your own, one, can be very, very dangerous, and without knowing the lay of the land or the lay of the water and the community and the culture. And two, you get more responses, you get better studies when you work with local communities. Yeah. It is absolutely critical to do this, and Mar Alliance is a great example of the way they work with that.
And I think we had Rachel on a few years ago. We could post up her episodes, tell her whole story. But she has her whole career. She didn't just one day wake up and decide she's going to go to Panama and do this stuff. Her whole career has been working in a lot of these developing countries.
Right.
She spent a couple years in Madagascar. She's worked in North Africa, and so you learn from experience doing that when you start out as a young person, and you just sort of learn. And that's like if you're a young person starting out and you want to really get into it, go to some of these out of the way spots. You're young, you can learn on the ground.
Yeah.
And you can always talk to someone like Rachel or myself or other people can give you some, a little guidance. I mean, I think with Rachel, I know with me, you just kind of got thrown into the deep end real quick, but you learn.
Yeah.
And then she eventually worked, she eventually went to Belize, set up her Mar Alliance, which originally was in Belize. Then she expanded out and moved down to Panama. And she has operations all throughout Central America, Cape Verde Islands, and so she's really expanded the whole operation.
Yeah.
and she's networked in there. She knows people in all these places, and I can tell you, she's been a longtime friend and colleague, and she knows people in all these places. If I want to go someplace,
yeah, you can go to her.
There, I just say, who do I talk to? And she'll just tell me, like, oh yeah, talk to this person or that.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to Madagascar last year. I talked about another episode. Rachel was one of the first people I talked to because I know she lived there for 2 years, and she gave me some real good insight into where to look in Madagascar. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a good training ground, especially if you're a young person. Especially you got a little bit of an adventurous side to you. It can be fascinating to go try and work in some of these places and learn about also learn about the cultures.
Absolutely.
Firsthand. There's nothing you're going to be able to read in the book or watch in a movie or see on YouTube. No, it's amazing to experience. So
yeah, absolutely. It was great to have Rachel on. This would probably not be the last time she is on. The way she does her work and the way Mar Alliance does their work. We might have some. I mean, Ivy's been on as well, who's part of the Mar Alliance, and so we'll probably have some more people on to highlight some of the studies they've done there. And if people want their studies on and they're interested in being on the podcast to talk about their experiences in shark science and their careers in shark science that we may or may not know. I mean, Dave knows a lot of people within the shark science industry, and most of the people that he knows are on the podcast. I know a few more as well. But if you're interested in talking about your research, either you've been on before or you haven't been on yet, hit Dave up at Lost Shark Guy. That's on Instagram,
Facebook, and you can also go through the San Jose State University to contact me, as well as the Beyond Jaws podcast,
of course,
on Instagram or on the YouTube. You can try to hit me up from there and catch us, and you can. No guarantee we'll put you on, but if you have something interesting you want to share, let us know, and we'll consider it. So
absolutely, yeah. So hit us up there, Beyond Jaws Pod on Instagram, also, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, hit that follow button so you don't miss the next episode. We want to thank you so much from Dave and I for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.